Okay, a little bit of history here for this bed. Uh, it looks like it's already ready to plant right now, but the reason that it looks that way is because I have just transplanted out of here everything that was growing here. There was asparagus in here, there were strawberries, there were comfrey plants, there were some other herbs, odds and ends of things, but anyhow, it was a perennial bed, basically a permaculture bed. Uh, can we see, Mike, does this show up down here, the bed down there with the high, those are Jerusalem artichokes there. But anyhow, these beds, the three beds that were up along here were permanent beds. Uh, they're they must be removed because we're going to put solar panels out along here, and we can't have anything high in the air that's going to shade those solar panels. So we're going to convert these beds into growing garden beds just like the rest of the beds in the garden. So what we're going to be doing here is to show you how we initially prepare a bed. I have lots of ways of preparing beds, slow ways and fast ways. This is a fast way. You don't have to do it this way. There are other ways. We'll get into that at another point. But for right now, we're going to get this bed ready. So what I've done prior to today is transplant everything that was in here out. And so I had a bunch of big holes especially where I took the asparagus out. Uh, and so I brought in a couple wheelbarrows of dirt, then filled those holes in. So this is what we've got left. It looks like it's well tilled and what have you, but it's not. Uh, and the bed is kind of narrow. We want to make a 4-foot wide bed. All these beds are 4 foot by 20 foot. And so we want to make that one to equal the size of the rest of the beds. So the first thing I'm going to do, since I've already added dirt here, is I'm going to add some sand before I do any tillage practice. And the reason for the sand is to give us a little better drainage, because one of the things I want to do here is, if you look over in the next bed, you'll see sweet potato plants. And we've got sweet potato plants in the next bed over. And so what we want to do is we prepare this bed to grow sweet potatoes. Now, sweet potatoes require a very well-drained soil. In most cases, sweet potatoes are usually built growing on small hills or a row that's hilled up. In other words, they're raised up and and heavily tilled soil. Well, we don't normally do that, but in this case, this will probably be the closest thing to what we call a tilled bed as anything else that you're going to see that I do. And this is a one-time deal. After it's prepared the first time, we don't do any more tillage other than using, I'll show you the tool here in a minute. But the first thing we want to do is we want to widen the bed somewhat, and we'll use this tool, which is called a U-bar. U-bar, that's a man's tool. However, it's got leverage, so you can get on this and work it down in. And this stuff is really hard here. It doesn't look hard, I know, on the surface, but that's because I dumped that other soil in there. But you can see there, when I bring it up, how hard that is. But this is, we use this tool usually just wherever we have sod. So what I'm going to do here is take this little sod strip along here we're going to till. But before we do that, I'm just going to go ahead and spread this sand here so I can get this stuff out of the road. And also, whenever I break the soil up, that'll let the sand go down in there, because I'm not going to churn this. I'm not going to rototill it. We want the soil strata to remain in place, what is there. So all we're trying to do is just to break this up a little bit, make it more friable. So You saw I got my wheelbarrow stuck in there. That's one of the holes where an asparagus plant was. They were very big, massive fibrous roots. Okay, this sand just came from a local quarry. It's about 8 miles from here. It's a sandstone quarry. So the sand came from sandstone, of all things. And at sandstone quarries, you can get various grades of sand. This just happens to be what they call concrete sand mix, which is used in the mixing of concrete. You can get a finer sand, which is used in masonry work for like bricks and blocks and so on. And you can get a grade that's actually coarser than this. It has a lot more like small pieces of pebbles, like of sandstone that are mixed in it. But we use this because of it's easy to move about, spread around. And there are, if you look in here, you can just see there are some small pebbles and what have you. But those break up fairly easy and they weather and soon turn into sand. Now, the tools that I'm going to be using to work on this actually you're going to see just about all the tools that I use to plant and do my gardening with. Now we're just going to spread this sand out. We're not going to try to make sure that we've got it perfect. We just want to level out a little bit. Once again, the reason we're using the sand is to create better drainage. The particular soil here that we have to work with is what's known as a stony silt loam. In other words, it's got a lot of stone in, but that's actually good for drainage also, as long as it's not solid rock. And stone, over time, of course, has minerals in it and will add more minerals to it. But first of all, we got to be able to get to those minerals. Okay, I think I've done about enough damage there. I used to put the sand on after I went over and tilled everything, and then I got to thinking, and then I ended up, trying to chop it in, mix it in a little bit on the top, and then I realized, well, if I do it this way, it'll save me a lot of work. Okay, so we're ready to, I just want to show you something here. This is also a U-bar, but this is all known as a double digging tool. You notice it's got rounded teeth on it. They have a bevel on the end, so they're easy to insert in the soil. And originally they were copper coated. Reasoning being that a little bit of that copper would rub off in the soil or supply a little bit of copper, which I suppose was true. But that type of tool is only good and already prepared. So, when you're working with these tools, kind of let gravity do the work for you. You notice that instead of me jumping up and down on here, I just kind of wobble it and let it work its teeth down. The teeth that are on this one are 14 inches long. They're 10 inches, the ones on that tool. But this tool can also be used, in other words, if you were doing all sod, this would be the tool that you would use. You'll get to see a video on this sometime of the slower process, one that doesn't involve all this work. I don't really consider it work. This is my hobby, what I do for fun and exercise. But another way of doing it, especially if you don't have small seeded stuff or something like sweet potatoes or any root crop that requires preparation or some tillage, would be to actually roll out paper or lay down newspaper. You can set up lines or chalk it out with lime, the outline of your bed, cover that with paper. What you would normally do would be to mow that area. Mow it with a mower, set it as low as it will go, mow all the grass, weeds, or whatever is there. Save that, bag it, keep it for later for mulch, and then roll out your paper. And then put the grass clippings back on there. And over the course of the summer, you keep adding more and more grass clippings or any other organic matter that you may have to the paper. The paper keeps the weeds from coming up, kills off the grass, the sod, and you just plant through the paper. I'll show you the tool after a bit here that we use to do that. When I'm doing one of these beds, if I have all the materials here that I need, and I do it all at one shot, it takes me about 1 hour to do one of these beds. Which, like I said, normally that's it. You don't have to do anything else. There's lots of things you can do to add work if you want to. But if you don't want to do the work, you just do the paper mulch, and then you replace that mulch every year. Okay. I've got her edged here pretty good. Looks like it might be a little bit more narrow here. If you want to be professional about this and you've got a good eye for straight lines, you may want to run ropes, twine, or what have you, and to make a perfect bed. We're just going to wing it. Now, what you're going to see me do is something I tell people constantly. Don't walk on my beds. This is the only time I do it, whenever we're doing this. I'm going to turn around here and start my first course because I don't want to be fighting the sod that's out here, because the tool pulls it up that way. This particular tool and the other one I was using are actually made for, they're ideal for 4-foot beds, because two parallel passes create a width of 4 feet. I don't think our audio is good enough to catch it, but you'll see sometimes that doesn't puncture right away, and you'll see me rock a little bit. What's happening is those tines are hitting stones, and I can hear it. I can hear them grinding and gritting. And every now and then, of course, we bring up stones. When I do that, we're cheating here because I just happen to have some stones nearby that we're going to throw the stones on. But normally what I do is I have a bucket here with me, and I just throw the stones in the bucket and then use them for fill somewhere, or put in a hole in the driveway, or use in a rubble trench, or whatever project might have going that can use it. Once you get into this, you'll note there's a number of ways you can do this. What I'm finding right now with this, it only took me a couple times of going down to realize, is that I can make each pass about 8 inches behind the next one, and then I can take my tool right in the middle of that. In other words, 4 inches and 4 inches, and do that. When you have really hard stuff, you might only be able to do a 4-inch pass at a time. But this stuff I'm surprised, because I really thought it was going to be harder than this. Actually, this is a walk in the park, because I just want to show you something I brought up here. That goes over in my cart. You see, that's an asparagus crown. So what I'll do is I'll keep that wet, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to transplant those asparagus. Just a note of interest, we're in the middle of July now. Did you ever hear of anybody transplanting asparagus? Number one, let alone transplanting asparagus in the middle of July. Our place here is Alternative Acres. Has that name for a number of reasons. But I learned long ago, especially with the internet, I figure about 90% or more of what's on the internet is complete garbage. And I've read reams of books on gardening and how to garden and when to do stuff. But years ago, due to the fact that I was running a lawn service landscape business, I had very little time to do my gardening. So things didn't happen the way I wanted them to, the way the scheduling normally would be done. So I just did as I could do. And I found out that lots of things that I was told weren't necessarily so. And the experts would say, oh, you got to do it this, and this is your window of time frame. There are good times to do certain things, certain types of pruning, depending on what you're trying to do, and what have you. But what I found in general with plants propagating, transplanting, and what have you, the main thing you have to be concerned about is moisture. You want to make sure to keep the roots wet when you're transplanting. So the thing that I do abide by is when I do transplanting, I do it in the evening. That way, when you plant the plant, number one, you no longer have the sun beating down on you, because that dries those little roots out really quick. But then you can water the plants after you've planted them or transplanted them. And they have all night to get settled in, plenty of moisture there. And what you'll find is, come morning when you come outside, look at those plants. Goodness gracious. No wilt, leaves are standing up perky, and especially if you've had dew, it looks like that they've been there forever. If you were to do that in the middle of the day, the hot sun, they'd be wilted, by the time you got them planted. And it would take days to recover, and your losses would be very high. So we're actually preparing this bed right now. It's actually 7:30 in the evening. I wanted to do it earlier. We were concerned about having light for filming. So you see that sand's kind of disappearing there. It's just working its way right down in. Depending on what types of plants I'm planting, I may not even worry about the stones at all, but since this is going to become a permanent garden bed, there will be times that there will be, like, we're going to have sweet potatoes this year, but there may be times there may be carrots or what have you, small roots and what have you, and they don't like stones. They like to grow around the stones and they get all crooked and not very nice looking. But if you've got a permaculture crop, it doesn't matter. Who cares? The roots go around the stones, wherever they need to go. Well, actually, this is not a permaculture bed. It was, but permaculture just simply means permanent culture. So what you're doing is you're abiding by the same principles that nature does for growing things. Nature does not completely abhor annual plants. It has annual and biannual and perennials. But in a permaculture setting, what kind of happens is if you have an annual plant, it obviously goes to seed that year. If it's a biennial, it'll go to seed the second year. And then that seed kind of falls in place. Some of it blows away and starts to grow somewhere else. Or birds or wild animals eat it and deposit it elsewhere. So you kind of have a hodgepodge of stuff coming up. In our eyes, it's chaos, complete hodgepodge, and we got to do something about it. Nature does something about it, but it just takes time. And she works it out the way she feels best. And of course, you have some plants that spread via a vine or rhizomes or what have you. So, nature's rather slow in that way compared to what we would like to do. We want to go in a couple of days' time and create a complete landscape. Nature creates a landscape right away, but it continually changes. Some of the tenets of permaculture is not only does it cut down on work for you, in other words, if you're going to be using mostly perennials, or let seeds fall down on site in situ. The leaves, the living green matter during the growing season goes back in the fall, falls off, goes back onto the earth. It creates a mulch on top of the earth. The mulch slowly breaks down, turns into humus. But while it's doing that, the mulch is protecting the earth below from erosion from wind, rain, water, flowing water. Then the mulch becomes humus. That humus is doing several things. It slowly builds up over the years. But it's providing food for the microbes, earthworms, fungi. Then those in turn do their thing. They provide a system of getting nutrients to the roots. People think that roots go down in the soil and basically are looking for nutrients, and we've got to supply those nutrients, either via foliar feeding or root feeding or what have you. And all that is nothing more than what we know as hydroponics. In other words, they're using the soil as an anchor for the roots. I thought that was a stone. It's just a hard clump of dirt. Anyhow, once this system gets established, if you were to look at a clump of living soil, you would not recognize it. In other words, if you were to put that under a microscope and look at it, you would not see dirt or what we call earth or whatever. What you would find is a living organism. And there's more porous space in that organism than there is solid material. It's just incredible. So, what happens, man comes along and tills that soil, destroys the soil structure, puts all the carbon that's in this soil that he has churned up and killed into the atmosphere. We don't want the carbon in the atmosphere, we want it here. We are, don't forget, carbon-based life forms. So the more carbon that we have in the soil, the more life that we can have. So, once you start that process of tillage, you have to do it every year. And actually, each year that you do it, you find that you need to do more and more tillage. You need to go out there a couple times a year and rototill your garden, because now you get a rain and the soil gets hard and it's baked, because it's now lost its life. And it becomes nothing more than a pad of concrete, basically. Okay, we're done with the sand. Now, normally, all these other beds, we're not adding in amendments, but we are to this bed. We've got a few things that we're going to add. One of them is, I have some dried chicken manure. From one of our chicken pens. So we're going to add a little bit of nitrogen. My little wagon, that's been around a long time. Used to be a toy. Now, I'm going to put on some rubber gloves, or you can use latex gloves or what have you, because I'm actually going to manually be applying this manure. It's dried. It's probably, there might be some here 2-3 years old, I don't know. We keep it in a dry place. As long as water's not getting to it, it'll last a long time. A lot of it is in lumps like this. When we dug it up or forked it into these bags, it was in big slab pieces like that, and we broke them up somewhat and put them in here. So I break it up a little bit. And just kind of spread it around a little bit. So we're adding a little more humus, and we're also adding nitrogen, as well as some more carbon. Okay, we can cut here, Mike. Chicken manure on, and I've got some bone meal here. I don't even think I bought this bone meal. I think somebody gave it to me. Oh yeah, I remember now. I did. It was in broken bags, and they put them in plastic bags at some garden center. And And if I paid anything for them, it was probably something like 50 cents a bag or a buck or whatever. Stuff's expensive normally. Bone meal's a source of phosphorus. It's very slow to break down, which is what you want, something that's going to last a long time. Supply food to the microbes. Remember, what we're trying to do here is supply food to the soil livestock, and then they will take care of the plants, get the nutrition to the plants. Also, this, I do remember, was given to me. It was in somebody's garage and they were moving. The commercial name is hydrotype, but what it is granite dust. So it's a source of potash, phosphorus, what have you. So it does a couple things besides the nutrients that it provides. It also acts like sand as far as making the soil more friable. And it takes a long time for it to break down, very slowly. What I'm putting on here right now will outlive me. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of level things off here just a little bit. That does a little bit of mixing within the top inch or two. We don't want to mix deep. We don't want to change the soil strata. All right. Now, the other day we mowed the grass. We mowed the grass with an electric mower and charged the mower with a solar panel. I'm going to be sprinkling just a little bit of grass on here before we put the paper mulch down. What we're doing here is help to add a little bit more nitrogen along with the manure. But once again, this helps to provide lots of nourishment for the microbes and the earthworms. We like to keep them happy, because once we put the paper down, paper also is a carbon source, and it takes nitrogen to break that down and for the microbes to help to eat that up. I used to just put paper mulch right down on the bare soil and realized there was nothing there right at the paper barrier. So whenever they're breaking down, the microbes and so on are breaking down the paper, they're taking nitrogen out of the soil, which is also taking it away from the plants. And since the young plant roots are right close to the surface, there's a little bit of competition there. You notice I'm careful now about not getting on the bed. I don't want to compact the soil. I want all those air pores to remain open. now we're ready to put the paper mulch down. Michelle, can you go over that hose, follow that hose over to the pool? It's probably turned on. That's all right, just turn the nozzle tight and just bring that hose over to me so we can do this quick. Now, you can do all sorts of things. In permaculture, my beds, where I've got heavy weeds and heavy growth and so on, when we chop it down, I actually use cardboard. You can use, this is just craft paper. You can use craft paper. You can use newspaper. I'm going to lay that on there to hold the paper down. And I'm not going to cut it yet. That roll will help to hold it in place down there, the weight. So I'm going to use two methods here. Number one, this paper happens to be only 3 foot wide. It's nice if you have the 4 foot wide. But if you don't, then we take newspaper, four layers, 4 sheets. Overlap it, overlap the paper there. Now, what's interesting about this, I can't believe this is happening, but Murphy's Law dictates if you've got paper and you're out and you're trying to lay it down, the breeze is going to get up and start blowing your paper all over the place. So that's just one of the things in timing that you have to do. Now, next step will be we will wet the paper. And if it does happen to be breezy, what I actually end up doing is I'll wet the paper as I go, and then once it's wet, of course, it's not going to go anywhere. So why do I wet the paper? Well, you'll see. You can cut it, Mike, if you want, till we're ready to water it. Pardon? Oh, okay. All right. Well, there are a number of names. In fact, there have been a couple books written. There's lasagna sandwich, lasagna gardening, where you lay down all kinds of material like this. What we're doing here is we're going to be using other mulch, but the paper, right off the bat, keeps weeds, grass, anything that's in there from coming up through. Any plants that I missed we're going to try to grow up through, especially comfrey. If there was comfrey in there, you're not going to get all the comfrey roots, and they're going to continue to grow. So we don't want any competition with what we're planting. So like I said before, you can do this method, you can actually do this. In other words, all this work I did with the tilling and so on, if you're just planting beans, tomatoes, peppers, sweet corn, you don't need to go to those lengths. You can just shave the grass down and put your paper mulch down. And then put the grass back on it, and every time you mow, catch grass and put on there. Now, you can keep a self-sustaining system going. In other words, you would not have to do anything else, no other amendments in your garden if you were to do that as long as you maintain 2 inches of grass mulch on that bed all year long, there will be enough nutrients from the grass mulch, and you will be supplying enough humus that you can keep growing in there year after year. However, if you want to grow topsoil, we get into something else. And in order to do that, you need animals. Almost any animal will do. We happen to use chickens. What we're looking for is humic acid to create humates. Now we're ready to mulch. The most important part is the perimeter early on so that it doesn't blow. Wind get under it and lift it up. If you don't have much grass initially, you can just put a thin layer on just to hold it down. Now, we're running out of daylight here, so we want to show you the planting process, especially due to the fact that I'm putting in sweet potato plants, and they've already been taken out of the ground, so they need to be planted. So we'll move on to the next step here. Ooh, that stuff smells. It smells like silage. It's been sitting for a couple days. We mowed beginning of the week. So it's a little bit clumpy, but you get the idea. Okay. Cut that mic, I'm going. Where will I leave my drill? I remember getting it out. Yeah, with an auger on it. Huh? Contractors, it's a professional contractor's commercial drill. But the auger it's an earth auger. It's made for, I have 3 different sizes. Okay, we've got 3 tools here that are my predominant tools for planting. I have a dibble, which basically uses a punch. I have a trowel, and I have an electric drill, battery powered drill with a 2-inch auger right now. I have various size augers. But anyhow, now you'll see why the wet paper. We're going to start here. I'm going to plant 3 rows of sweet potato plants. Each plant will be about 12 inches from equidistant. When I say equidistance, you look at a triangle, point, point, point. And so it's 12 inches all ways. So we're going to start out here. I'll start my middle row here. So with the wet paper, you punch right through. If you have dry paper, especially if you're doing newspaper, there's a tendency for the paper to catch and wrap in the auger, and you'll pull the paper right up. I actually have another, what I call a dibble stick, which is a long broom handle that has a pointed end on it. And you can use dibbles for, large seeded, like kernels of corn or beans or what have you. And then you just simply walk along and make your hole and drop it in and take the dibble and punch it back down in and compress the soil around it. And smaller, larger pots and what have you, you can use a trowel to make your hole. Punch right through. Okay, I've got some sweet potato plants. We're late in the year, so we're going to go with a short season variety. These happen to be Beauregard. They're an orange sweet potato. You can get reddish and orange and yellowish and white. We like the darker colors. A number of reasons. One is the more color a plant has, or food item, is the more nutrients and phytonutrients and what have you that you have. See the plant? Got a nice long root system there. Put that down in the hole, compress some dirt back around that, pull the mulch up around. Usually takes me about 10 minutes. I must have missed my, oh, there it is. Now, what's important about sweet potato plants is you water them immediately. And now this time of year, we're going into a drought now. We don't know how long this is going to last. But we may have to water. Normally, I'm going to have to water them a little bit to get them started. And once they're started, because of the mulch, that helps hold the moisture. The other thing with putting that hole in there in the paper like that is that allows access for moisture if you do water. Actually, what I find the best thing to water these is, if you're going to use a hose, that's fine. You can just spray the water right over the plant. Or if you have a sprinkling can, take the sprinkler head off and just, that way you'll have a little stream of water coming out of the pan. You can direct that right over the plant, right into the plant. Because you don't have to worry, there's plenty of moisture in the soil otherwise. We just want to make sure that the plant has plenty of moisture, because it's been pulled out, so now it's lost almost all of its feeder roots. Conservatively 600 potatoes. So my wife and I like to eat sweet potatoes, a lot of sweet potatoes. We don't eat white potatoes much anymore. They have much more nutrient value than a white potato does. And they're tasty, good. Uh, and we probably eat 5 sweet potatoes, each one of us a week. So that's 10 a week. So, that's 520 sweet potatoes right there. But from time to time we will have guests, so we'll need a few more. So those 3 beds will supply us with sweet potatoes. So that's a bulk of nutrients, right there on a daily basis. I'm going to get the sprinkling can. Uh, Probably not going to be able to see. It's too dark to do that. Okay, this water that's in the sprinkling can I just drew out of one of our rain barrels from the garden shed roof. How apropos, huh? Garden shed, providing water. See what I mean? You can just put that right on just water that right where the plant is. And I'll do this every day for a while, get them established, until they get their feeder roots out there and going. Okay, there you have it. This is one of the more intensive beds. Most of the beds will just put paper down and put grass mulch on and either punch holes through and plant corn or what have you. The corn beds, sweet corn beds over there, I plant a half a bed every week. Each bed has about 2 dozen plants in it. I mean, each half bed. And we plant every week. We start the last week of April normally. This year we could start earlier because we had a warm early spring. The sweet corn does not like cold, wet ground. It will rot, it won't germinate, it won't come up. But anyhow, we have, you can see the various rate growths there. We have this last bed over here where the corn's just coming up, and we just seeded the other day over here. So anyhow, what this does is it provides my wife and I 2 ears of corn a day right up until frost. You want to pan on the chickens here, or? This is one of our movable coops. These are called chicken tractors because they get moved on a daily basis, and you move the chickens right with them. The chickens walk along with the moving of the cage. And you want to cut it there, Mike? I'm going to get. You want to just come down to the lower end of the coop there, and I can do this myself. But what I have to do is roll the rubber back so I can see them, because I don't want to catch any of them when I'm moving the coop. When I have the rubber on there, I can't see them. You can roll anytime you want, Mike, and once you get, okay. So we set out, we keep feed on one end and the water on the other. So if you'll just, you don't need to do anything other than make sure the chickens aren't, there, because I don't want to catch any chickens when we move. So either I roll the rubber back so I can see where they're at, or I have somebody there to watch them. And so then we just move this pin. Okay? Everybody okay? Let me know when I get to the spot where we stopped the other time. Should be soon there. It doesn't matter, we're at the end here. Okay, so I'm going to go down here then and get some feed, and fill the feeder, and I'll wash out the water container and put the water back in, and that's it for the day.